So welcome everyone to this month's fundraising workshop. Let's see, this is the 9th one we've done. And each month we have someone join us and teach us something about business and or anti-racism clinical practice. And then we pause in the middle. The training is free. We pause in the middle for completely voluntary donations. And we also do Q&As, and I'll share a little bit too. So this month we have Annie Schuessler here, and Annie's the best. I worked with her. I started working with her last June, I believe, is when I signed up for your 5-week program. And Annie runs a program called Create Your Program. It's for therapists who are itching to create something additional to their private practice. And I was, because a lot of people had started coming to me to create their own private practice. And I had come up with the loose idea of how to kind of walk them through that. And then I jumped into Annie's program and then ended up creating Lloyd Collective. And I'm really happy that I did. It's just a way better product, for lack of a better word, than what I was kind of playing around with in so many ways. So Annie is joining us today to tell us 3 things. I asked her to do this. I thought a lot about like what would be the best thing to ask her. She has so much experience, and she's joining today to tell us 3 things that she wishes everybody who's running a private practice was doing. And then Annie, if you want to share a little bit more about your background, you're more than welcome to, but the time is yours.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I had a private practice. I'll say this much about what I used to do. I had a private practice for 20 years. I closed it last spring, planned to close it way before we knew about the pandemic. And for a while I ran a group practice. So I have a lot of opinions about what I wish everyone was doing. So I'll just jump into those 3 things, and then please let me know if you've got questions. And we'll absolutely go there. So the first thing is I wish that everyone in private practice was charging a lot. And then, so we'll just start there. Not controversial at all. I wish everyone was charging a lot who's in private practice, and then using their overflow to make choices about money and time. And some of those choices could be about donating time, donating money, creating a project that might benefit a lot of people, or providing some really affordable therapy. Like all of those things and more would be some of the choices that can come from that overflow. And sometimes what I see instead is people, and I used to do this, charging, like figuring out what we absolutely have to charge and then just barely charging that to try to be affordable. And for most of us, when we are needing to meet our living expenses and all of that, that isn't that affordable anyway for a lot of folks. And so a lot of therapists then I think end up being pretty unaffordable for a lot of people anyway, and also not supporting themselves. So I would rather see people charge a lot and then be able to make choices with that overflow. And also therefore not need to burn out because they're charging what they need to charge in order to get excellent supervision, self-care, breaks, time off, and then also have that overflow of time and of money to put towards the other things in life. So that's the first one. And I know I didn't give a number there because it's going to vary so much for different people and their area and their living expenses and all of that stuff. So for me, this isn't necessarily about amassing wealth. It's about not burning out and having some overflow to make amazing choices with. Okay. Another thing I wish everyone was doing is really paying attention to and curating our influences. So where we are, who we're interacting with and being influenced by. So looking at our clinical supervision, getting clinical supervision from really awesome people, curating our own consultation groups, looking at where we're getting our training and investing in that, looking at who we're hiring as business coaches, looking at our business peers, like not only who we talk to about the clinical stuff and who we lean on with that stuff, but also who of our peers we talk to about business. And I know I have some peers, like I have a consult group that I adore, and we've been together for like 15 years, and they let me stay, even though I closed my therapy practice. And they are just gold for me in terms of clinical stuff. And now as a coach, like getting to, lean on them for the clinical side of coaching, if we can call it that. But they're not my business group. Like they're really not. I'm happy to help them and we can bounce things off of each other around business. But I have other peers I need to turn to as my business influences. And if I was waiting for one of these groups to be my influence in all areas, I think I would just be really holding myself back. And I see that for other folks too. It's like find those people who are a really good influence for you on the business stuff, on the clinical stuff. Don't insist that they're the same people, although if it's Ariana, they probably are. And then keep going with like what podcasts you listen to and how they are influencing you. The social media accounts that you let yourself follow, curate that, just like go through it and look at who is influencing me. And are these the folks who are helping me get more free? Do they really help me move towards who I want to become? And do I need new influences in any particular area? And then, root it out if you're finding that there are influences that just don't serve you. Should I go to the next one? Okay. My final one is I think everybody should be simplifying. So looking at everything you're doing in terms of the stuff you do to bring in clients, the stuff that you do to learn new things, and how you run everything behind the scenes, and be really ruthless about paring things down. And maybe there's something that you want to be creating and you're feeling like over cluttered and not able to do that. And paring down and simplifying all of your systems can really make room for that. I know that's been true for me. Maybe it's about wanting to find a way to work less without bringing in less money, and look at what could you simplify to make that possible. So in all those different ways, clearing the clutter in what you're doing and how you're doing it to make sure that you're making really conscious choices. And a couple of things that tend to get in the way of that are sunk cost fallacy. That's this belief that we have that if we have invested in something, if we have put time into something, then we're going to be losing all of that time, all of that money, all that investment by letting that thing go. And so that often makes us hold on to things that are actually not serving us anymore. And so one way that I like to look at that is like, would I go after this now? What would I do to go after this now if I didn't already have it? So kind of like looking at my systems, and maybe there's something there that I never used and I invested in it and that bums me out, but letting it go so that I'm not then allowing it to drag me down. Or maybe there's like an offer like in my business that I put time into, and I've got 5 offers now, and I don't want to let something go because I put time and love into it, but maybe it's time to go. So looking at what you can simplify. And I just last night, this is a little bit unrelated, but like just last night, I was cleaning out some cupboards and I found this bag of streamers for parties. And I was like, let's be honest, I don't use these when I have a party. And so, like, there was some like mini grief in like putting that away, putting it, into the donate pile and being like, let's just be honest that we are never using these streamers. And that's okay. We can open up to whatever else is going to go into that cupboard. So, same thing with our businesses. And I just think this is a constant process of simplifying. So those are my three things. Yeah. Any questions or any pushback?
So great and straightforward. I'm going to say them all again really quickly before we do Q&A, just in case someone missed them. The first one was that Annie said she wishes everyone in private practice was charging a lot more. And it doesn't help to not explain them, but we can dive into them. The second was you wish people were like more thoughtfully curating their resources, podcasts, consultation groups, all of those. And then the third is that everybody should be simplifying like their offers and their systems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And their streamers.
And their party supplies. So I'd love to go to the first one and see what questions come up for people. I think that one is, in some ways it's the most provocative. Yeah. I think therapists really struggle with charging more and with nailing down that number. So any questions or thoughts that came up for folks around this? And I can share some that I had as well.
Hi. Okay. Hi, Annie.
Hey.
How's it going? Nice to see you. I think that's, like I'm going to start working with Ariana on Monday. I'm very excited about that. Yay! Annie introduced me to Ariana. So I'm looking at transitioning from taking insurance clients to private pay only. I live in Oakland where, my therapist started me out at $180. So then I decided that's what I was going to charge. If I have to pay $180, I'm going to charge $180. And then, kind of looking around, she increased it. She also worked with Annie. My therapist worked with Annie. Oh. There's a whole legacy here. But she increases her fee $5 each year. But I have not done that in the time I've been working with her. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the men that I know in private practice who are charging $200 or $250 an hour. That's how I feel about that. Or just, I'm kind of like, okay, is this what I should be charging? Because that's the going rate here in this area, because that's what these dudes think they are supposed to be making. And God bless, right? Try not to be bitter about it. But I'm just, I think that's a really interesting question to be asking. And I also, of course, like every other therapist in the Bay Area, want to make my practice accessible to people. And how do I do that? So maybe that's sort of the main one. And maybe you already said something about that and I missed it, but that's certainly what comes up for me. I'm going to be quiet now.
Yeah. So is it okay if I dive in, Ariana? Okay. So what would come to me is I interviewed family recently who's not a therapist. And sometimes people who aren't therapists have really great insights for us. And she said in her field, one thing that she does is pace herself against white men and use them as a first kind of point of looking at what she's going to charge for things. And so if you were to charge $250, you would have to overcome a couple things. Like one, it can feel really weird to charge more than your therapist or more than someone else who you think of as more experienced than you, or someone who you think of as ahead of you. And oh my God, if I had waited for my supervisors to raise their rates, no, it would never have worked because they never did. So yes. So what if you charge 250? Like one thing to think about is what would you, and I'm not putting you on the spot to actually answer this, but to think about like, what would you do with that income? And sometimes that can help build trust in yourself that you're actually like a really good person to have money or to have money flow through you, and to look at the things you could do with that. And on the blunt side too, like 180 is really expensive. So to be accessible to folks who have no disposable income, it's not happening anyway. So I know this is perhaps oversimplified, but I really like the model instead of like, go ahead and charge 250 and then look at what that makes possible in terms of, is one of your priorities. If one of your priorities, like you named it, is making services accessible, what could you do then without you burning out that would make some services accessible?
I have someone I work with who charges a lot for their services, and they do that so that they only work 2 days a week, and then they donate their services to nonprofits the other 2 days that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that model. I do get the question all the time though. You know, a lot of clinicians I work with come from community mental health. So they're used to seeing people with severe and persistent mental illness or struggling with a lot of socioeconomic barriers. And they don't want to not serve those people anymore. And they want to make like more of a living wage. So sometimes I tell them, think of like a group offer that's like 20 or 30. So you're going for more volume to make it affordable for you to run it. But I do wonder about that too. You know, if there's anything we can do besides just acceptable, be out of a lot of people's price range, because in some ways then like, you know, then only the wealthy get this like really skilled clinician, and then it kind of can perpetuate some of what happens.
I like a sliding scale to be more like, I don't know about the word sliding scale for this, but I like it to be more instead of just like this, to be like this, and then have some like really affordable spots.
Yeah, I've seen people do like tiered. Portland has this great place called Portland Underground Graduate School, PUGS, and they do a tiered fee structure. And they say, if you make this much an hour or less, you pay this price.
Mm-hmm.
They make it really clear. I think that's really nice, really transparent.
Yeah.
So I also got a question a while back, Annie, from Rebecca saying, can you have a price range? Can you share a price range for people that are just like brand new to charging? Because a lot of people, when they start their private practice, they don't even know somebody in private practice. They don't know what like the cash pay fee is. Maybe they've always done insurance for their own therapy.
Right. I think it totally depends on your area. Ariana, I bet you have a better answer for this one. Like what would, like I'm in the Bay Area, and like we were talking about 250 as something that some folks are charging. Yeah. What would you say like in Portland?
The price range here, I would say that if a therapist doesn't have anyone to talk to, what they're doing is charging between 50 and 100. But if they're talking to anybody, ideally they're charging between 1 and 200. Mm-hmm. It's rare that I don't know anybody that charges over 200, and I only know one person charging 200.
Yeah, and if you don't know any cis white men, like talk to some of them and find out what they're charging, if they'll tell you.
That's the one person I know that's charging over, like charging the 200 amount. Yeah. And don't charge, like Annie said, don't charge what your supervisor charges. In fact, I'm a really bad supervisor that way as well. but supervision is also not my main thing. So you also, if you're basing your price off someone, you want to think, is this their main business? Are they providing for their entire household this way? I know a lot of therapists that keep their prices under 100, but they are also the secondary breadwinner in their home, and they're partnered with someone who's making much more money. And that makes a huge difference in how you set your fees.
That's right. Like, I think Ariana and I are both like breadwinners
Yes.
in our family. So we're not effing around when we
Yeah.
are running our businesses. Like, I'm sure many of you.
Yeah.
Not to, I mean, that doesn't, I don't mean to imply that if somebody is also supported by someone else, that means they're effing around. I'm just saying, like,
It goes to the decision making.
Yes.
That's one way. Another way too is once you kind of know the range of your local area, making sure you know what your annual expenses are.
Yes.
And Annie, you do a really great marketing workshop on this, where you're having people do their expenses, how many hours they want to work a week, how many weeks they want to take off for a vacation, and then looking at, I think you have a page on your website for this, don't you? A spreadsheet or something. Looking at those numbers and figuring out your ideal range from there, versus like, I'll do what my neighbors are doing, but then I don't know why I'm feeling burnt out still.
Right. Because like the vacation and the cancellations and all these things haven't been built in. And then that can also be another thing to really look at, is it's not just your fee, but it's also your cancellation policies and whether you stick to them. And if you don't, just looking at how, give it a number, like figure out, and you can do this, like figure out how many thousands of dollars a year you are losing because of that cancellation policy, and just see if that works for you, if that feels right. Because if you're gonna, like, that can be part of your thinking about your fee, is like, I have this fee and it's got to account for this many cancellations as well.
Yeah.
So I like math. Like, I really like figuring out with math.
Yeah. It resolves it. It gets you out of your head and just makes it pretty straightforward. Yeah. So we have another question from Bianca, and I also want to ask questions about your other points, but I'd like for us to pause now and talk about Meadows Livingstone School. And Annie, I would love if you would share why you chose this organization. And Gail Meadows is here, and she started the school. So Gail, if you feel comfortable turning on your camera and want to share for a few minutes too. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my camera on.
Okay. Well, Annie's going to set you up, and then if you want to share as well.
That sure. I don't stop video. No, I'm not stopping video. I'm not muting it.
We should be able to see you.
Yeah.
But we can't yet.
You have a cover on your camera? Is the cover down? I've definitely done that.
Oh, duh. Thank you.
I only know because they've done that.
There it is. There it is. Aha. Oh, I should raise my chair up a little bit. There I am. I forget that. Okay. Hi, ladies.
Hi, Gail.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
So, Gail, do you want me to go first?
You want to?
Okay, I'll go first. I got we can't see you again. I got permission from my son, who goes to Gail's school, to share a little bit. And so I'm going to try not to cry. So I'm a parent of a kid at Meadows Livingstone, and he's heading into his 6th year there. I think that's right. And so the public school that he was going to was not able to serve him in a really loving and liberated way. And it was starting to really make an impact. They couldn't really see him clearly. And there were some loving individuals there, but the structure of the school was really starting to take its toll on him. And he was starting to get pigeonholed as a troublemaker. And yeah, people weren't seeing him clearly. And so we knew we had to switch schools. And then we learned about Meadows Living Stone, and we couldn't believe that it existed and that it's actually like really in our neighborhood. And then we met with Gail, and it's just been a dream from there forward. And we really never looked back. And so that's our personal story. And it's really become like a second home for him.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, I haven't really said anything about what the school's like, but I'll just say like they have dancing, they have drumming, they have singing, swimming, tennis, yoga, really robust art classes, time for play, writer's workshop. They teach accurate history. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg. So yeah, Gail, what do you want to say about your school?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Gail Meadows, and I started the Meadows Living Stone School in 1979. And I mainly started it to counteract everything that I encountered as a child. My schools were all white, except for me, of course. And I did encounter a lot of racism and sexist behavior. Luckily, I wasn't a poor child, so that does give you a bit of an up, you know. But I did get those questions. Are you on scholarship? Do you live? They didn't have the word ghetto. The word ghetto in those days, when I was a child, had the true meaning. People of the same culture live in a place, same place, you know. Now it means it's a buzzword for poor people, right? So I started my school because I wanted children of color and children, European American children too, to experience a place where they were safe and they learned about their culture and other people's culture. Our mission statement is, well, it's our aim to educate the whole person. So as Annie said, we have our physical activities, other than recess every day. We have yoga and tennis and swimming. And all of those, you know, enable the children to climb mountains. If you think you can't do something, then you remember that, oh, I could hit that tennis ball. I could chase that tennis ball. I can do this. I can calm my body down, calm my mind down, and do this yoga exercise. So that's one thing. And that what I like is that we have a therapist on staff. We have an LCSW on staff, and he happens to be married to me for 49 years. And we have group therapy. We have group, and we call it keeping it real through music. No, keeping it real through feelings. And we have individual therapy. Well, I like it because it's very normal to the children. And I believe that when they get to be in their teen years and adults, they won't hesitate to go to therapy. They'll know it's normalized to them. And having group therapy with children, they're very kind to one another. Of course, we always stress that, but they don't go home and tell their parents about this group therapy. They don't tell their friends secrets, which is very nice. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, and so therapy has it's not stigmatized in our school. We are a political school. We have books and we have discussions and we have special newspapers, and Indie Kids is out of New York, and it is the ultimate in children's political newspapers. Do you remember anyone's old enough to have, oh gosh, I don't even remember that newspaper. You've got the Weekly Reader or Scholastic News. They're very sexist and racist, right? And the politics are extreme. So the children and I are reading, the oldest children and I are reading the history of the United States. And it's difficult, but they're good readers, but they just go on a tangent about what they've read, right? So that's good. And they can tell people, and we're teaching them that you can be polite and tell people that you don't agree with them or that you know another way of thinking about it. So we have older children who go out and about, and they tell people, and they've told teachers, this is not the way I learned it. And I have teachers call me and say, where'd you get that information, right? So we do the politics, and we have an art teacher. She comes every week, and we've entered contests and won them, and some of that art is political too. Well, the whole school is, so, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, and the socialization. We visit senior centers, and we serve them and we entertain them. The children, every week they recite poetry or they sing a song, whatever, it just has to happen. But the day that I saw the children serving the adults, you would have thought they gave them $1 million. They were so proud of themselves. They were so happy to help. Like, yay. Of course, that children are the best helpers ever. What else do we have? We have a choir. Yes.
I hate to cut you short, but I did want to ask, it sounds like it's an incredibly radical school. And one of the things we do here is we fundraise for different organizations that are doing work just like yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did want to ask, when people donate today, where would the funds go? What would they be besides the larger picture and mission of the school?
Right.
Where do donated funds go?
The donated funds, some go to scholarships, others go to, we used to be a big camping school, and we haven't been able to go camping. So these funds perhaps will go to our camping scholarship fund, or art funds, or to fund the art teacher, or to fund, or we lost our grant for our dancing teacher. So we would like to have funds to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
where it goes. And do you mind putting the donation link in the chat box? And we offer, as I mentioned at the beginning, we offer these workshops for free. You're welcome to donate as in place of payment. So Annie generally charges a lot per hour. I don't know your hourly rate currently, Annie, but I know it's a lot. And so she's donating her time and her preparation and business wisdom and in support of the Meadows Livingstone School. And so if you want to support that, you are more than welcome to. If you would like your donation matched, you can private message me in the chat box, and my organization matches donations. And so far we've raised, I don't know actually at this point how much we've raised doing this. We do it every month. I think we're over 4,000 now to different, to different organizations that are doing radical liberation-oriented work.
You can send it to my website. There is, to our school's website, there is actually be www. But you know that, right?
I also found by going there the PayPal link. Do you want me to put that in?
Oh yes, if you would.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Colleen had a question about what the age range of your students is.
The age range of my student is kindergarten. Well, every 3 or 4 years we take 2 kindergartners, and we did that this year. So the age range would be roughly from 6 to 12, or sometimes it's from 6 to 13. Some children stay, and that's been very good for us. I put that on, but nothing's happening. Did you see that, everyone?
No, but we got Annie's link for PayPal. Does that work?
That works.
Okay.
Right.
I'm so sorry to cut you off, Gail.
That's okay. Thank you for having me, everyone. If you have any questions, or do we have time?
We do have time. Does anyone else have questions?
I bet you're thinking like, how's this school so awesome?
Yeah, I wish that we had one close by. I would definitely send people there.
And we are citizens of this world. So European American children come to our school. Asian children, Latino children come to our school. And it's funny because every time a white child comes to our school, they have blonde hair and blue eyes. And people stare at us and they ask the kid, why are you with these people?
Wow.
Yeah, that happened a lot, right? So, okay.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Gail.
Thank you, Gail.
Bye. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank
I haven't
you.
gotten to see you in a long time.
I know you have long hair.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, looks good. All right, I'm off then. Bye.
Thanks, Gail.
Yeah, I really appreciate
Bye.
it.
Bye.
All right. So yeah, feel free to private message me donation amounts and I'll match them and let you know how it goes. So I'd love to dive back into questions with you, Annie, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Bianca had a question, and Bianca, do you want to share your question, or I'm also happy to read it? Okay. So hers says, yeah, I could read it, no problem. It says, what are some important things to consider factoring in when determining services? I think of the day-to-day bills, but I'm not really sure how to consider retirement. And yeah, and other factors I'm not even considering. And Bianca's not in private practice yet, but they're planning to do it in the next 2 years or so.
So you're asking about like what all your expenses might be and what are all the things that you might want to be saving for? Is that basically what we're thinking about?
Yeah, it sounds like she's
Yeah.
thinking about like not just like how do I value the session itself, but like what about all the other expenses that I should make sure I'm covering?
Yes, I love that question. It's really great.
Smart question.
So yeah. So I'm thinking, like, I know in that like calculate your fee thing that I had going on, I tried to think of all of the things that can be expenses that come up, whether you're paying rent or not, insurance, having some money set aside for business development as well as clinical development, having some, like you're mentioning here, having some money set aside for retirement, because we're not, in the US, we're not in a place where we're really going to be necessarily taken care of. We don't necessarily take care of our elders. And then also looking at adding in some savings for your business too, for those things that come up unexpectedly, like your laptop breaks or your kid decides to spill milk on your laptop, or the things that happen. They don't decide to, but they do. Adding all of those things in. And one resource that I like in terms of I know there's so much to financial health and financial education, but one resource that I like is Paula Pant. And she's got a podcast called Afford Anything. It's not exactly radical, but it's definitely not radical, but I like her voice. I like her approach. And she's hella smart. So that's one person in terms of just that finance side of looking at retirement and looking at investing and all of those pieces. Ariana, I'm curious what I'm not thinking of.
Yeah. I mean, you can do like retirement calculators, right? And see how much you need to. You could also meet with a financial advisor and see what they're thinking by which age you should have in savings, you should have in like your IRA, and then kind of map that out for the however long till you want to retire. And then it's always good to, like have at least the 6 months cushion if for some reason you couldn't work during that time, especially if you're the only provider. So like if you built your fees so that every month you're saving a certain amount as well. Those are all things I would do. And I would plug it all into a spreadsheet.
Yes.
And then adjust it until it was just right. And I think when you're in community mental health or in a different job, you get used to just like month to month. So I think it's okay if your first draft of your fees is just like one step up from where you're at right now. And then over time you shift. I think that's okay too. I don't want people to feel pressure to like have this huge change or huge mindset shift. And that's not always realistic. But also like running your numbers by somebody makes a huge difference. The few times I've run my numbers by people, it's been so helpful to have them be like, that's ridiculous. You need to like, you're way off. And that's very, very helpful. Like you want to know, because most of us are going to undercharge. Yeah, which gets us back to the same thing. So I forgot to have you, Annie, before we go into some of the last 2 points, will you share briefly about what you do and how people can connect with you?
Oh, sure. Thank you. So I now run a program to help people who are therapists and healers and coaches to create offers beyond private practice. So beyond what we've been talking about in terms of like having a private practice where you are working under your license and earning money through your sessions. This is for folks who want to also, or even sometimes instead of that, want to create some kind of signature program that they would offer, usually online, although it can be in person. It could be something like an in-person retreat, for example. So usually an online signature program like a coaching program or an educational program. So using the skills that you've got and the gifts that you have and creating an offer beyond private practice with that. So I have a program that Ariana went through.
Yep.
And it's where over 5 weeks you'll go from having an idea of what you might want to create or even not being quite sure what you want to create to actually creating your pilot program and launching it.
Mm-hmm.
So to find out about that stuff, if that's ever something that you're interested in, you can head over to rebeltherapist.me. And then I also have a podcast for folks who want to just hear from a bunch of different therapists and healers and coaches and other kinds of entrepreneurs who have created innovative programs. So I've interviewed folks from who have created all different kinds of businesses. And Ariana is one of them. And her episode is coming up, I believe, is it in like it's very soon. So Ariana's episode could be a really good one to listen to.
Yeah, Annie's.
I would say that's the one to start with, but it's just not published yet. So I can't say that.
And your whole podcast is so good for any therapist who wants to figure out business stuff. It's a really good podcast. It's really fun. Yeah.
There's also been a development with the podcast where if you listen to the beginning episodes, they're all about private practice. And then all of the more recent ones are about beyond private practice.
Oh, that's really nice to know too. Yeah, that's helpful. And we get to see your progression as a business owner too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you. And then I wanted to share very briefly, I think most of you already know me, but my business, of course, is Lloyd Collective. And I do an 8-week program where you build your private practice. That's the program I created with Annie. And applications open today, and the next cohort starts 2 weeks from today. So you can apply on my website. And I also work with people one-on-one, and I do these monthly events. And that's part of my commitment to about a year ago, who was it? Rachel Rogers held a huge workshop and said, hey, you all need to take the anti-racism business pledge and then put these practices into like the bones of your business. And I really took that to heart and wanted to use my money and use my creativity and my community, not use my community, but you know what I mean, to develop something new and interesting and that is in line with similar values. And that's why all of you are here, which I really appreciate. So I wanted to see if you have any other questions for Annie's last 2 points, which were about curating your resources as a business owner in the work you're doing, and then simplifying both your systems that you're using to run your business, but also your offers within the business.
Or you can also ask whatever, if you've got any kind of question about practice or whatever.
Yeah. So Annie, Octavia said, when you already have a private practice set up, how do you go about changing or switching up or introducing new services?
So usually what I recommend is to, in terms of like the nitty gritty part, is to have especially if you know this is something that you really want to grow, is have a separate website for your new services, like your services that you're not doing under your therapy license, if you've got one, so that you can really protect your private practice, but you can also really let this other project like spread its wings and be what it needs to be. And that's the first thing I would think about. And one of the things that kind of can help actually in terms of letting this new business spread its wings is you're probably going to want your stuff outside of private practice to be more niched than your private practice is, where you're going to want it to be really specific what problem you're solving. Whereas as a therapist in private practice, niching can be a great idea. And Ariana will teach you how to do that. And if you're creating an online business that's beyond private practice, you really need to niche in order to stand out, in order to be able to attract people and for them to understand how you can help them. You can't really be a generalist unless you're Oprah, then you totally can.
Or if you're like in a small town and I don't know.
But if you're running an online business, then it tends to be pretty location independent. Yes. If you're in a private practice in a small town, absolutely you can be a generalist and not be Oprah.
Yeah. Any other questions for Annie? I know I have one, but I want to make sure other people. So I'll jump in, and if you have one, definitely ask your question. So Annie, one of the main questions, along with the fees keep people from getting into private practice because they don't want to exclude people, but they also don't know how on earth they'd ask for a certain amount. And the fees keep people from getting into private practice. The logistics of it all really does. And marketing. People, most people have never had to, maybe they've even been working for a few decades and never had to find a client. And their only concept of marketing is just like this really awful culture of marketing, or, like whatever they're exposed to, like on social media or elsewhere. And so that is a huge thing that keeps people from moving forward. So I wanted to hear your like top advice for people finding clients for their private practice, especially when they're brand new. Or like Octavia said, if you're pivoting and adding like a new service, so you need a different set of clients.
Yeah. So I think the main pivot I would make in how we think about marketing is to think of it really as what you most want to do is communicate, like get really clear on how you work and who you want to serve, and then get really good at explaining that to people. So like if you are really good at explaining that in regular people's language, then that's good marketing. And anytime that you're getting jargony about it or getting vague about it, then that's going to be a lot less effective. So I think working on being able to, in a very conversational way, whether you're talking to someone or whether you're writing your website copy, being able to just really explain, this is who it's for, this is what I do, this is why it helps. Like that's probably the hardest part of marketing and the most important part. And then that's what you do on your, like you want to have a really clear website that's simple and that is, written in a way that's very conversational, kind of the way you would talk to a client in a first session when you're trying to help them feel comfortable, and also isn't vague, because sometimes people get the conversational part, but they're just getting real vague, like welcome, it's safe here. Like we don't need to do that. We need to get really really clear about what we're doing. And Ariana is great at that, and it's showing people how to do that. And So what I think of is like have a really great website and have a networking plan where you're in conversations with other professionals who can refer to you and you're staying top of mind with them and you're being helpful to them and you're letting them know you and you're being vulnerable with them and just nurturing those relationships, I think is key. So, and I think it's more about having those quality relationships where you're really letting people know you more than having tons and tons and tons of relationships where they don't really know you and they're not going to refer to you. Like I know I was telling you about my consult group earlier. Of course, I'm going to refer to them first because I've known them for, over a decade. And I think you all are the same. Like you're going to refer to the people first who you know the best. So allow people to know you and have some relationships that you just keep adding to over time.
That's really great. The let people know you part, the vulnerability of part of it. Yeah. And then we have one last question and then we'll wrap up here. Sheila asked, can you say one process that you see often that needs to be simplified and how? Like what's the most common process that's tripping people up in their private practice?
Ooh, okay.
Simplify it and they just, yeah.
Yeah. I think onboarding is really important, is super key, like having a very clean onboarding process where maybe there's one way that people can sign up to work with you and it's really clear what that is and you are on top of it because it's easy for you. Like they have to start by sending you an email form or they have to start, I mean, that's probably a good one, whatever it is though, or they have to schedule a consult call and it shows up because they scheduled it through Simple Practice or whatever. Just have a simple thing and don't think, well, but some people like to do it this way and some people like to do it that way. And so I've got to have all the ways. And then sometimes I don't get back to people for a week because I got overwhelmed with all my systems. So that would be one example is like have someone else pretend they're a client and go through your onboarding process so that they can tell you, like, are there any weird parts of this? I've seen before, I'm sure none of you would ever do this, but I've seen before on someone's website, and this was part of the onboarding process. They accidentally had something that was like that the clinician had written like, fill in this part before you publish. But they hadn't filled it in before they published. So just like have somebody go through, look at it, and make sure it's all working simply.
That's hilarious. Well, we should wrap up. I wanted to let you all know that next month, my dear friend Anna, who's this wonderful photographer, is going to be coming to speak to us about the visuals of your practice, of your website, of headshots. She does all the photography on both my websites, and I love it so much. You can check out her website, but she'll be here next month and providing that training. And I wanted to say thank you to Sheila, Colleen, Shannon, Law, and Andre for donating. We really, really appreciate it. We raised $240 for Meadows Livingstone School. So thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next month. That's all.
Thanks, everybody. It was so good to be with you.